Bem-vindo a mais um Casos Tarológicos. E hoje eu tenho aqui uma pessoa que, para mim, eu considero um ídolo e é uma pessoa muito, mas muito importante na comunidade internacional do tarô. Eu nunca imaginei que em algum momento da minha vida eu estaria batendo um papo com ele e muito menos gravando uma entrevista com o Robert Place. Ele é uma pessoa, digamos, dentro do cenário internacional do tarô, muito importante, e um dos seus livros, que eu vou colocar aqui na descrição, inclusive, é considerado um dos livros mais importantes já escritos na história do tarô. Então, olha só, agora eu vou começar a falar em inglês, e se você quiser acessar as legendas, é só você clicar aqui em CC, e você vai ver lá os subtitles, e você pode colocar as legendas em português ou as legendas em inglês. So I'm going to start talking English now. This is the first episode in English. I didn't think a name yet for it. In Portuguese, I call this YouTube show Casos Tarológicos. And maybe the best translation for it in English, it would be maybe Tarot Stories. And in this pilot episode, I have a tarot legend here, one of my idols, and a person that's very important for the international tarot community, Robert Place. So, Sir Robert Place, welcome.
Oh, thank you for welcoming me. Yes. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you first, for your time. And the first question I ask everybody that comes here is, how did your tarot journey begin?
Oh, well, it's well known how my tarot journey began because I mentioned in every one of my books. But but the thing is, I started with a dream. The thing is, I always tell people I didn't really choose the tarot chose me because although like back in college I knew about the tarot. My girlfriend used to do readings and even when I was in college, like I started doing some research in the library, and I look at like antique decks because everybody was using the Wade Smith cards. That's what my girlfriend used, and I saw these Tarot Marseille cards. There's like older cards. They're really cool. So then I started trying to make a deck based on the Tarot Marseille, and I got little pieces of gray cardboard, and I paint the cards by hand, and I got maybe 4 cards done, and I went and I said, this is a lot of work, so I gave up. And I never really thought much about it, but I always paid attention to my dreams. Like my main form of divination is really dream divination. So it's in 1980. I have a note. What was the time? Let's see. We have the notes here. Hang on. Okay. So in 1982, I had a dream where I was walking through a building. The thing is, the dream was really about something else because there was a woman I recognized. Like at that time, I was making jewelry and selling at craft shows, and the woman I saw walking in the dream was another jeweler that I knew from the craft shows, and I was following her into a brick building. And this is about a whole other thing, and she walked through the living room and then into another room, and I walked into the living room. And as I'm walking through the living room, there was a telephone table on the side with a telephone. It was one of those telephones with the receiver on top and a dial. It was black, like a real classic, like 1960s, 1950s kind of telephone. Like now everybody's just got these little things. But okay, but it rang, you see. And the thing is, a lot of people don't realize this, but back in 1982, when the telephone rang, you used to answer it. Now everybody expects to just go to voicemail or something.
Yeah.
So the phone rang, and it was like, oh, I have to answer the phone. And it was like weird because I realized it was a message coming from outside of my consciousness. And it was like, wow, I didn't know somebody could interrupt you in a dream, because, like a phone call would interrupt you during the day and you have to go stop and answer the phone. And it's the same kind of thing. It was interrupting my dream. So I picked up the phone, and this, a dream operator got on and said she had a person-to-person call for Robert Place, and it was coming from England. So I accepted the call, and then she put on this woman who was a secretary for a dream law firm, and they said that she told me I had an ancestor who left me an inheritance, and it wasn't like he recently died. This happened a while ago, but I had an inheritance coming, and would I accept it? And she said there was a certain karmic debt attached to it that he had accumulated, and I would have to take on some of the debt to pay for it, which would help him out, I guess. So so I said yes. And I sort of, it seems like he should have thought about that. Like, why would I take on karmic debt? But I did. And then I sort of, you know, it was like, I said, well, but how do I know? Well, you know, what is this thing? And she says, well, it's very powerful, and you know it when you see it. It's called the key, and it comes in a box from England. So it was so vivid that when I woke up in the morning, I sat up in bed and I was expecting the box to be at the foot of the bed. You know, my wife's looking at me like, why are you staring at the foot of the bed? And I told her about the dream, you know, how exciting it was. So she got excited about it. And then I kept looking around saying, well, what, you know, where's this? The inheritance has to be coming, right? So within like a day or two, my friend Scott, who's a musician, you know, we were living in New Jersey at the time. And I was sitting in the kitchen, and my friend Scott used to just come over and come in. There's a back door to the apartment that was in the kitchen, and he would just walk in because, you know, he's a good friend, right? So he comes walking in, and he's holding this tarot deck, the Wade Smith cards, and it was like my head, you know, my head turned involuntarily. Like I said, why is my head turning? And my eyes focused on the deck, and then because she had, you know, the operator told me, the secretary told me that I would know it when I see it. So I looked at it and I went, oh yeah, because the trumps are called keys. The book was called Key to Tarot. It obviously was originally made in England. It comes in a box, you know. I said, this is it. This is an inheritance. So aha, you know. So then we started looking through the cards, and see, Scott said a friend of his had just mailed him this deck. A friend of his from Midwest someplace had just mailed him this deck as a present, and he wanted to show it to me. So we're looking at the cards, and I started telling him about my dream. And I said, well, gee, I should get one of these decks. Now, the next day or so, my friend Ed, who was an astrologer and very intuitive, he came to my house and he had a Tarot of Marseille. And he said, I have this tarot deck laying around the house, and this intuitive voice is telling me that it's yours, and I'm supposed to give it to you. So he gave me the Tarot of Marseille. So I started playing with that, but I realized I also had to get the Wade Smith. But see, living in New Jersey at that time, it wasn't like you could just go into any store and buy a tarot deck. So I had to go into New York City, and I went into a store in New York City, and I bought the tarot, brought it back. And then so I had the two decks. I had the Tarot of Marseille and the Wade Smith, both of which decks I knew about when I was in college, but now I realized they were my inheritance. So I started playing with them and working with them. And then I thought, well, maybe I should read some books on the Tarot. And I started reading the books, and then being, you know, I was always an artist. And I studied art history you know, since I was ever since I was in high school. And I read these tarot books, and I say, well, this is nonsense. Like the things they were saying made no sense, because, you know, like they were saying that tarot came from Egypt, and, you know, there weren't any cards in Egypt. You know, it was like, I mean, the imagery wasn't Egyptian. There was like a big gap, or like, you know, like in the Bota Tarot, he said that it came from Fez, Morocco, when all these ancient adepts got together, or so. Everybody had a different theory about the cards. Mostly it was saying it was like this ancient Egyptian text that came down, and they just all repeated the stuff that the occultists had basically started saying in the 1700s. So then I started looking for other books, and I said, but, you know, I'm looking through these decks, and I do see all these things. You know, I see these references to alchemy and Hermeticism and Gnosticism, and so I started reading more and more books on those subjects, and then comparing it to the cards, right? And then I found some really good books about the history of cards, like you know, Michael Dummett's book and Gertrude Moakley, who were real historians, and they really started talking about how the cards were first created in Renaissance Italy and how they came from Italy. And that's when I started really putting things together and developed my own techniques for reading, because I realized my dream maker was giving me the tarot cards, because I was using dreams as my main form of divination. And so what the dream maker was giving me was a way of giving myself a waking dream with the cards. So then I wanted to work out a way of using the cards as a waking dream. And then I found that the simplest way to do it was to make a message with 3 cards together and look at it as one story. So you know, like most people say, oh yeah, they do a 3-card reading, but then they say, yeah, the first card's the past, second the present, third the future. But I don't do that. The 3 cards are all one message. So if I want to do past, present, and future, I'd have to have 3 cards for the past, 3 cards for the present, 3 cards for the future. The 3 cards are one message, and that puts they're like little components of a story, and then you put them together and they make the story. So that's how I got started.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because the first time I read it, I don't know, I have this big relation with my dreams. So for me, it was, your story was very meaningful. It is actually, yet. So, and I think all those relations, all those experience you have with your dreams were awesome. Yeah, for sure. I truly believe it.
Well, you know, the thing is, a lot of people write to me and tell me their dreams because,
oh yeah,
you know, because yeah, well, you know, I have a good friend who's a psychologist, and he calls me up and tells me dreams all the time because he knows I can interpret them. So, you know, and I don't necessarily interpret them psychologically.
Yeah.
You know, like, because he comes from a tradition of psychological interpretation, but what I do is I just look at what they're saying, like a story, you know.
I'm gonna start to write you my dreams. I'm joking. I'm not gonna go. So, actually, how did you create your first deck? I mean, how was the process of the first one? The first one was alchemical, yeah? No.
Yeah. The first ones I did those 4 cards in college and gave up. You know?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, yes. I remember this.
Yes. Okay. But the thing is, the alchemical tarot was the first deck that I did and published. Okay. So the thing is, like, now it was jump ahead to 1987, and there was this thing, like, all the New Age writers and commentators talking about the harmonic convergence. You remember this?
Yes.
The harmonic convergence was supposed to be the start of the age of Aquarius and the New Age, and there's going to be this alignment of the planets, you know.
Yeah.
And they made the whole musical, The Age of Aquarius. You know, they made songs about it and everything. Okay, so I just figured it was a lot of nonsense. But but the thing is, I started getting more and more like, I just thirsty for all this knowledge. Like, I kept reading more and more books on alchemy and mysticism and magic and Gnosticism and, you know, Hermeticism, and, you know, like a whole. I really want to know about our Western mystical traditions, and it was like, the thing is, I was working as a jeweler, and I was getting, my jewelry business started suffering, which I think was part of the karmic debt that I took on. So, but my jewelry studio started getting like stacks of books I was reading instead, you know, going up to the ceiling. And people were getting worried about me because they said, well, why are you so like obsessed with these things, you know? And so one day I was listening on the radio, and they were talking about the harmonic convergence, and one of the speakers was saying, during this time, people who are really sensitive to this information, there'll be a flood of knowledge coming to them from these mystical sources. And I said, oh, I guess that's what's happening. I mean, so he actually said this thing that made sense because I saw it was happening to me. So I sort of accepted that. Okay, so it's just the time that I'm like getting obsessed because this flood's got to come into me. It's like changing me. Like, you know, I mean, I've always been an artist, and like all of a sudden I'm like keeping tabs and, you know, making lists and notes and comparing things and acting like a writer, and I never was a writer before. So you know, the change happened. Now, so one day I was looking through the picture museum of alchemy and sorcery, and I forgot the whole title. What's it? Here it is. Oh yeah, here we go. The Picture Museum of Sorcery, Magic, and Alchemy, by Emile Griot de Gavry. It's French, obviously. And so I was looking at this one picture of the Philosopher's Stone. You know, now the thing is, the Philosopher's Stone is the object all alchemists want. The great work of alchemy, the magnum opus, is to create the Philosopher's Stone. The Philosopher's Stone is this catalyst that changes anything into its highest form. So, you know, they always, everybody commonly knows, okay, alchemists are trying to change lead into gold, which is what the Philosopher's Stone could do, because they believe that all metals were of one substance, and that gold just had a lot of impurities, and if you purified it, it would eventually become different. You know, go through this ladder of the metals. You know, it would become lead would become tin and iron and copper and you know, mercury and silver, and finally gold. So there's like this ladder of seven metals. So gold was like the purest form, but basically the Philosopher's Stone could turn anything into a pure form. So it could make the philosopher, which is what they called an alchemist, would be elevated to become an enlightened sage. You see, or also it could heal any illness. It's a panacea, and some people said it could prolong life indefinitely. You know, that's the theme in the you know, the first Harry Potter novel was originally called The Philosopher's Stone in England. And you know, and like how he meets Nicolas Flamel, the famous French alchemist, who supposedly lived on through the centuries because he found the Philosopher's Stone. Yeah. Okay, so the thing is, but they say, see, the Philosopher's Stone, they say it's a stone that's not a stone. It's immaterial. It's not made out of the material substance. You take a material substance and you basically kill it, and you release the soul that's inside the material, and then the soul becomes the Philosopher's Stone. So so how do you picture that? Because you can't see it. See, so what they do is they make these symbolic mandalas that symbolize it. So this particular mandala I was looking at, it had a heart in the center of a cross, and the heart had 5 drops of blood, and then there was a wreath like of thorns around it. So obviously it's you know, related to the crown of thorns and the Sacred Heart, right? But then in the background, in the 4 corners that were like outlined by the cross, were symbols of the 4 elements. And then there was a rose, which is a symbol of perfection and alchemy, coming out of the heart. So see, in alchemy, that the heart was the soul that was being exposed. It was the quinta, what they call the quinta essentia. Like, you know, the word in English quintessence comes from quinta essentia in alchemy, which means the essential 5th element. Like, see, there's 4 physical elements, and the 5th element is the soul that animates, you know, ensouls. Yes. That's what animate means, to ensoul reality, right? So this anima is what's being released, and that's this is a picture of that anima. So I'm looking at the picture, and I'm thinking, you know, I'm studying the Tarot, and the world card in the Tarot has this woman, and dancing woman in the center. And I was thinking, and it started reminding me how there's an Egyptian hieroglyph of a dancing woman that's a symbol for the soul. And I said, well, the heart's a symbol for the soul. This is the soul being released, and that woman dancing is a symbol for the soul. And how, and then in the corners on the world card, there's the 4 evangelist symbols. And I was thinking about how in medieval symbolism, the 4 evangelists were related to the 4 elements, which is in the corners of this. So you know, and basically they outline the 4-fold world, the 4 directions, the 4 seasons, the 4 elements, the way we look at the physical world. So I was thinking, this thought came to me. I said, well, if the world card has a woman that's like the heart in the center, and the evangelists are like the symbols of the 4 elements, then these symbols are interchangeable symbolically. And if this symbolizes the goal of the great work, and the Tarot's world card is the final card in the series of trumps, could the series of trumps be outlining the great work because it ends with the same image or a related image? Now, when I thought that, it was like a key that opened up this portal in the back of my mind, and this flood of imagery. And it was like, oh yeah, it's all alchemical. Like, it just flooded through. Like, I kept seeing how cards were alchemical images, and like it happened in seconds. And it was like, whoa, you know, like an epiphany. And so then I started making notes, and you know, I got my copy of Jung's Psychology and Alchemy, and it has all the alchemical pictures. And I'm writing notes next to all the pictures about which cards they relate to, and like, you know, and showing how the alchemical you know, magnum opus is the trumps. So, and then I wanted to, you know, I'm grabbing people, like, look at this, look what I found, you know, and telling about it, you know, and making charts and all this stuff. And people would say to me, well, why don't you should write this? You know, you can't just go around accosting people and telling them about it. You know, that's why people write books, you know? So, yeah. And I said, yeah, but I never was a writer. And then I said, yeah, well, maybe I should write about it. And then my friend Kathy would say, well, you're an artist, aren't you? Why don't you design a deck explaining it? And, you know, I'm like, duh, you know, yeah, well, that's obvious. Like, that's what I should be doing. Okay. So, you know, so then I started doing the cards. Now, once I started doing the cards, you know, I got a few of them done. The very first one I did was the star card, where it shows the Siren of the Philosophers, how she's expressing blood and milk from her breasts, and there's a star above her. It sort of looks like she's almost like the Starbucks logo, because she's got 2 tails the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did that one. Then I did a few. You know, I got like 10 or so done. You know, and this, of course, again, I'm taking time away from making jewelry, and my jewelry business is suffering because I'm spending all this time drawing now. So then let's see, okay, so we were online at a store in Manhattan at a health food store, and I saw there were these magazines that had a magazine rack, and there was like New Age magazine, and there was this New Age magazine called Gnosis. And I said, geez, I just been discovering about the Gnostics, and now I find out they have their own magazine. Like, what is this? So so I'm looking at it and wow, this is interesting. It's like a whole magazine for Gnostics. And then my friend Sue said, well, aren't you going to buy that magazine? And and I'm like, oh yeah, of course I should. I like, see how my friends kept nudging me along. So like, it's like Scott runs the deck. Kathy says, why don't you draw the big, the cards? Sue says, buy this magazine. So.
They all have a relation with this, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, they all say, saying, these are good ideas. What am I? Yeah, I should listen. So, okay, so I bought the magazine. I read it cover to cover. I was really excited about it. And it was like the editor, Jay Kenny. I lived in San Francisco, and we used to go to San Francisco like once a year to do a craft show to sell our jewelry. Anyway, so I'm reading the magazine, and that voice in the back of my mind, which is like the dream maker, which I since determined was Hermes, the god of alchemy, who was the bringer of dreams, right? Okay, so Hermes says they're going to do an issue on the tarot. You should send them like what you're, some of the pictures you're doing for the tarot deck, and because they'll publish it. So I said, oh, that's a great idea, right? So I really put together, Xerox some of my pictures, my drawings. And I wrote a letter to Jay Kenny, and I mailed it to Gnosis magazine. A week later, Jay Kenny calls me up from San Francisco, and he says, "We're not doing an issue on the tarot. What made you think that?" And he says, "But we're doing it. This issue is on the goddess, and then we have this article on Sophia, and your picture is a perfect illustration to go with the article, and I'm going to publish it. And I want you to write a one-page article, like about that goes with the picture that explains this tarot deck you're working on." So that's it. So then all of a sudden I got, I'm a writer. I'm writing an article for this major New Age magazine, and they're publishing my picture, right? And I was never, I never was a writer before. So I write this article, and see what happens. See how, like, Hermes, how Hermes is the god of liars. So see, he lied to me to get me to do the right thing, because if he explained to me the actual thing, I wouldn't believe it.
Yeah.
So it made more sense to say they were going to do an issue on tarot. That was like more logical, But the thing that happened was so illogical. It was ridiculous. Like, oh, send it right now because you'll just get there in time for the illustration for this article they're doing. Like, I went, what are you talking about? So, but that's what happened. So anyway, so it went out, and then Rosemary Ellen Guiley, who's a New Age author who had written at this point maybe 10 books, and she had written encyclopedias of the occult and books on angels and all these different books, right? And she was a reader. She read Gnosis all the time, and she saw my article and she got really enthusiastic about it because he was doing a book called The Mystical Tarot. So she got in touch with me and said that she wanted me to put some of my cards in her book, The Mystical Tarot, and write a few pages on it. So here I'm getting published again in her book, right? And so I put Temperance and the Devil, right? So which is sort of, they're two cards that go together, but they're sort of opposite things, like, Temperance is like health and the Devil's like sickness, So so I wrote about it in their book, and then she realized that I knew a lot about alchemy, and she was writing a book on alchemy. So she hired me as a ghostwriter to write some chapters for her book on alchemy. So now I'm published again, right? I mean, I just became a writer all of a sudden. So then she called me up and she said, so how is your alchemical tarot coming along? And I was saying, well, the thing is, I'm supposed to be making a living as a jeweler, and I don't have a whole lot of time to work on the cards. So and she said, well, the thing is, you should get a contract from a publisher, and they'll give you an advance. And you can use the money to free up your time so you can finish the deck. And I said, well, that's a great idea. And she said, and you should have to write a book that goes with the deck. And if you want to team up with me, I'd be really glad to team up with you on the book. So I thought, well, that's really good, because the thing is, I never wrote a full book before. And she's an experienced author who has a really good track record and real reputation. So so as a result, she said, well, let's, I have a good relationship with these people, HarperCollins in London. It's the branch in London called Thorson's, right? So we made a proposal. She showed me how to put the proposal together. Made a proposal, put together a lot of pictures of the cards. We sent it off to Thorson's, and then the editor-in-chief from Thorson's calls me up from England, which is sort of like a completion of my dream, because I got a call from England in the first place. And she said that she was, really enthralled with the artwork, and she just thought it was marvelous, and they really wanted to publish it. So we worked out a contract, and then I started working. I got a pretty good advance, and I started working on the cards. And basically, they gave me a year to finish, and it took me 2 years to finish. And the thing was, that's really unheard of in the publishing industry, because it cost them money when there's a delay, But the thing is, I kept sending the artwork I was finishing, and they thought it was the best thing they were publishing, so they just let me go and kept doing it, which I found out later nobody does that. So the whole thing was like the Alchemical Tarot wanted to get published.
Yes.
And everybody just lined up and let it happen.
Yes, everybody was pushing you. Just do it.
yeah. Just keep sending this artwork. Do this. Okay, so it came out in 1995. It was published, and then we got Rosemary and I also got another contract from HarperCollins in San Francisco to do an Angels Tarot, because I don't know. Do you remember in 1990s, Angels were so hot. Everybody was into angels. Rosemary was writing about angels, and okay.
I was still a teenager in Brazil. I'm 40 now. I'm gonna be 40. 2 weeks. But I was a teenager in Brazil, and angels were angels everywhere in Brazil.
Yeah, I know. It was silly. It was
stories and mystical.
You go to the mall. You go to the store, had angels selling shoes. Or
yes, Brazil was the same thing. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, wait, this isn't even New Age anymore. It's just they use angels to sell everything. I guess there was a Calvin and Hobbes cartoon where, Calvin said, "Yeah, I believe in angels because they're everywhere."
That's a good joke, yes, sir.
Okay. So they asked us to do an Angels Tarot. Now the thing was, Harvard San Francisco, they had asked about 10 different people to put in a proposal, and I didn't know it. So we were in a competition. I didn't even know it, because I wouldn't even, if I thought I was in a competition, I wouldn't have done it. But we put our proposal, and they said, "Oh, well, yours is the best." And of course, they gave us the contract, right? So Rosemary and I got teamed up. She worked more on the book. Like with the Alchemical Tarot, I really wrote most of the book, but she helped me form it, because I never wrote a book before. But this one, I let her write more of the book because, just based on what I was doing with the artwork, because we had this limited time to do it, because they thought angels are so hot, you have to stick to the schedule. And I found out what, publishers really do. I had 6 months to finish this thing, and it was I had to get up every morning and draw until I went to bed at night for 6 months.
Yeah.
So we got the Angels Tarot done. And then I tried to do some more proposals, and then there was at that time there was a glut of tarot decks on the market, and there was a lot of bad artwork, and they weren't selling well, and the price of printing was going up, and so the publishers didn't want to do tarot decks. So it took me a long time to publish something again, and then that's when I realized how easy it was to do it just seemed absurdly easy to do the Alchemical Tarot, like it was supposed to happen, because now it was hard. But then Llewellyn, by around 2000, Llewellyn got interested in what I was doing, and then I did two things with them. I did the Tarot of the Saints and the Buddha Tarot, and then I had another inspiration where I did the Vampire Tarot. Now the thing was, see, when I did the Alchemical Tarot and the Angels Tarot and then the Tarot of the Saints, people thought I was some kind of Christian tarot person, right? But I wasn't, it wasn't I was just interested in the mysticism, mythology of, the Western traditions. So when I did the Buddha Tarot, then I said, well, they thought, okay, well, I guess he just does, he's into all spiritual traditions like Buddhism, Asia, and not just European. Then I did the Vampire Tarot. Now nobody knew what to make of it. But the thing was, the Vampire Tarot I thought was a really important deck because it focused on Bram Stoker's Dracula, and I was showing how the Bram Stoker's Dracula was really based on the Grail legend, which was one of the influences in the Tarot, and how they went together, and how even Bram Stoker was familiar with the Tarot. He was friends with all these people in the Golden Dawn, and like,
yeah, and I think Pamela Smith had a relation with him. Yeah, when her father was traveling, she used to stay with Bram Stoker. There's something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, she used to call him Uncle Brammy. She used to hang out at the theater, and like,
Yeah.
Because she, Ellen Terry, like, it was the actress there, like she was good friends with her daughter, so she knew her really well, and lived at her house sometimes. And then she was the main act, like she was the most famous actress in England. It's sort of like hanging out with Meryl Streep or somebody now,
Yeah.
So yeah, okay. So she knew Bram Stoker really well, and then, like, in fact, they were on they did this ship ride together. They used to take tours to the United States, go on a theatrical tour with the company, and she went with them on the ship. And then they did some plays on the ship, and she made drawings of them, and she has, she has pictures of Bram Stoker with the hat on it that says HMS Drac, vampire or something on his hat, and like.
Yeah.
Like making fun of him, So, yeah. So they were good friends. In fact, she illustrated his last book, the White Worm one, The Lair of the White Worm.
Yeah.
So anyway, we digress. But eventually, see what happened is, I would buy the Alchemical Tarot from the publisher, and I would sell it, right? And that's how I was really making more money, because once the advance was done, I'm not seeing any, I don't see any royalties. But the thing is, what happened is that Thorson's had a falling out with HarperCollins San Francisco, and HarperCollins San Francisco was no longer distributing the Alchemical Tarot in the United States. So a lot of people thought it was out of print. So now eventually it did go out of print, and that drove the price up, right? So I was looking, like, on eBay, an original edition of the Alchemical Tarot, which was the book and deck sold for like $30 or $35. Originally $30, then went up to $35. Okay, it sold at auction on eBay for $2,070.
Wow. Yeah.
So I'm thinking, like,
wow. Of course.
I'm not making any money on this, and I said, but obviously people want this deck, right? So I thought, well, gee, if they want this so bad, I could make giclée prints of it and hand cut them and make an art edition that I could sell for a few $100s, and it'd be cheaper than what they're paying for this, the mass produced one at this rate. So I did that, and then some people said, well, why don't you just print your own copy? So I wrote to the publishers in Thorson's and got the rights back because it was out of print, and then I started printing it myself, working on it and continually improving it. So now this is the 6th edition that I just came out with. You can see here, and I see how I changed the box. So I have this 2-part.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Box with cloth covered. Notice how the cards have a silver edge. Every time I do it, I make improvements on the artwork. See how the edges are different. Different backing back on the card. Like,
it's beautiful.
Yeah. So the thing is. And of course, then once I did this, I started, producing my own decks. So, like, I realized that the thing is, publishing companies are in trouble, and they're paying their authors less and less and less. And I realized, well, but they're making, and if you sell, a couple of thousand copies of something for a publisher, that's nothing. And I think, oh, well, this is terrible, we should drop this. But if I sell a couple of thousand copies, I'm doing really great if I'm making the money. So I said, well, I should just publish these myself. I already have a reputation. Right, so I mean, if people are willing to spend $2,070 on one of my first edition decks, I obviously can sell some decks. So I designed the the Tarot, the Sevenfold Mystery, right, and then I just this one, the Alchemical Tarot Marseille, which is my take on Marseille.
It's a beautiful work too.
Yeah, and they're all now I'm doing all
beautiful actually.
Boxes. Yeah, and I started doing Lenormand decks, and what else do we have here? That's the Alchemical. Oh yeah, then we have the Marziano deck, right? We have Alchemical Magnum Opus, So there's all these variations on what and they're always with my style, with the gilded edges or silver edges, and and the 2-part heavy box that's like a permanent box. You can keep the deck in the like it's a display piece. So And then of course I was doing Lenormand decks too, and I did one based on Japanese culture. And let's see if I can find that. Hang on, it's here. I'll show you some of the cards. See, there's gold edges, and you can see how there's a little book that comes with it. But you see how like there's a playing card up in the corner, and then there's these sort of iconic images, like Lenormand images, right?
Yeah. You have an oracle based on a playing cards too. Yeah.
Yeah, the Hermes playing card oracle. Now, that one I tried to make it just look like a regular playing card deck, but it has.
Yes.
There's a copy of it here somewhere.
Summon decks. Oh my God, that's beautiful.
Yeah, this is the first edition. I changed the coloring in the box on the second edition.
The Hermes playing card.
Yeah, but see, it's just like it has a little like seal there, and like it's just they're like the same size as playing cards. So basically, look, see, they look like playing cards, right? And see how like this is the four of hearts, but see each card has a divinatory image at it. So they're sort of like flipping the Lenormand on its head instead of making a divinatory image with a little card in the corner on top. It's a card with a little image, a little divinatory image. So I thought, yeah, let's do the opposite. I thought that's really innovative. But then, as I studied and I found more antique decks from the 1800s, people were already doing that.
Yeah, what I think is that you are a complete artist. You're not just a painter, but you were like a jeweler. So I think you brought everything together. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's see. We'll put this back here. I can do a lot of things. I made sculptures. I did metalworking.
It's like Da Vinci.
Yeah. I can write. I dabbled in music when I was young, but I'm really I can't just do many things. I can't do music.
That's awesome. I have a question, but I think you just answered it. But how was the process like to create a deck? How long does it take? Because you told us that
the first one, the alchemical tarot, I would draw it in pen and ink, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, well, I'm going to color in gouache, but then how do I get I didn't want to, the gouache is like opaque watercolor, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like use a gouache or just a transparent?
Yes.
Yeah, use gouache. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So if I went over the lines, they disappear, So the thing is, and I was making the drawings first with all this cross hatching. So I said, well, how do I get the color in here? Because I want to do this nice gradations with the gouache, right? Made the sky go from dark blue to light blue and fade out. So I found out. So there was a friend when I moved up here from New Jersey. When I moved to New York, there was this fellow I met who was a commercial artist, Alan McKnight. And he was showing me how well you can get these film positives made. You take your drawing, and then they make an actual, negative of it, full size, and then they make a negative of the negative, which is a positive. And so you have this clear sheet with the black lines on it. And so I take that, and then I put the paper over on my light box, and I trace the basic areas that I want to color. And I color in with the gouache, and then I could keep laying the lines on top, to make sure it all worked out. And so that's how I did all the coloring and everything. Like to do the sky to fade out. I had little cups of the blue because gouache. When gouache dries, it looks a little different in color.
Yeah.
So what I do is I would mix the dark blue and then the light blue, and then have 7 gradations between it, and they'd all be in separate colors. So then I would paint a stripe of the first one, the second one, and the third. Like go down all 7 layers, and then I would take a brush with a little, like just slightly wet brush, and sort of feather the edges together so they would blend, and that's how you get the gradation, right? So this took that's why it took 2 years, So.
Oh my God! Yeah, it's a lot of you need to do it again, actually.
Well, most of the colors were flat because then the cross hatching was brought up the shading. Okay, so. Then I sent it to the publisher, and then they sent it to China, and then what happened? And then they sent me back a sample, and what happened is the paper stretched, and the color was out of whack with the lines. And I was like, they showed me the cover and go, well, the paper's stretched, they keep these things in sync. So the printer back in China, they had to use a heat lamp and shrink the papers back, and then they coated it in plastic so it wouldn't get moist again. And then they shot the whole thing. I mean, it's a big rigmarole, right? Okay, so as I kept going, then like this, this is back in the 90s, and I'm starting to learn about computers, and just realizing everybody wants everything on computers. So then I got a scanner, and I would scan my drawings into the scanner, and then put them in Photoshop, and I would just color them in Photoshop, because you make layers the same way just in Photoshop. And if you want to do a gradation, you go blink, do gradation. It takes a few seconds.
Yes.
Instead of like hours. So.
Yes. Oh my! I
Okay.
can't imagine. I can't imagine that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then I said, well, gee, I should do this on the computer. Then I was like, well, why am I drawing on pen and ink and scanning it in the computer? I'll just draw on the computer already. So now I just draw on the computer, because everybody wants a computer file for the printer. That's what the printer wants. So you've got to give them a computer file. So it's better off working with a computer file and making it the way you want, because that's how it's going to print.
Yeah, it makes more sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
So yeah. So that's the process. So, but basically, depends. It depends. Like I can usually do a tarot deck in a year, like when I had the contracts. But the ones like the Sevenfold Mystery deck I worked off, while I was doing other decks, I kept working on that. It took me like 10 years to do it. And like I'm working on one right now that's taking forever, but it's based on the first occultist to write about the Tarot, Court of Jebelon.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like that. He and Mon Primitif in his Encyclopedia of the Occult that came out.
Yes.
It was volume 8, came out in 1781, and that was the first occult article in the Tarot, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but he had a second article next to it by the column. It said by the column to M, which everybody figured out was the column de Malay, and the column de Malay is much more, descriptive of what he's doing. And of course, like I see, the Court of Jebelon's, like his interpretation was that the tarot came from Egypt, but it was like it was like brought to Italy in Roman times, and brought to Germany and France, and so it basically was reinterpreted with Christian symbols. It wasn't like he was stupid; he knew it didn't look Egyptian. But the thing is, he had this theory that it came from Egypt, because everybody, they basically, the theory going at that time among learned people was that Western culture, the birthplace of Western culture, was Egypt. And so the Greeks were based, their ideas were based on Egyptians, and Greeks influenced the Romans influenced Western Europe. And so Western European culture, the source came from Egypt. Okay. So that's where all the, so basically all the occultists picked up on that and kept repeating what he was saying. Now, and he had pictures of the Tarot of Marseille, and was giving them, Egyptian titles and themes, right? Okay, now next to it was this article by the Column de Malay, where he was looking at the Besançon version, not the Tarot of Marseille, which has Juno and Jupiter in it, and 3 different things. Instead of the High Priestess, and the Hierophant, which was originally the Papist and the Pope, it has Juno and Jupiter. And has some other variations like that. So anyway, but he thought that came from basically, like, their idea of ancient Egypt wasn't quite the same as Egyptologists have now. Like, they were familiar more with the Hellenistic version of Egypt, when it was was part of the Greek world, like Alexandria. So that Jupiter and Juno were in it made sense to him, because like it was this mixture of classical and Egyptian ideas, right? Okay, but he interpreted the cards that they really told the story of the creation of the world, from going through the 3 stages, from the Golden Age, the Silver Age, and then the Bronze and Iron Age. Okay, and so. And he saw how the trumps could be split in these 3 parts, which is very accurate. It was very similar. Like, his ideas is similar to my idea of how I had this revelation where it could be the great work of alchemy. I don't think they intended it for it to be the great work, but somehow those are complementary ideas. So the same with this, with the 3 ages, was sort of complementary, except that he was going through it backwards. But by going through it backwards, what he's saying is we are now in the based Iron age, and that but if we follow the cards back towards the Golden Age, we go towards enlightenment, which is what the great work says too, right? So I thought, this is pretty accurate in his own way, what he's doing. So I started trying to create the deck he's describing. So that's what I've been working on now. So I've been working on that for over, during the pandemic. So the last 2 years I've been working on it. Yes. And I put some of the pictures up on Facebook.
Yeah, I've seen. Do you have any daily, like, tarot practice? Do you do like readings or meditation on cards or something? Because I think like creating a card is a practice, of course.
Well, I just sort of think about it a lot, you know. Well, like I use the tarot cards for very practical things when I have questions. You know, and like, or like, you know, my wife doesn't do tarot, but she's always asking me to do the tarot for her to make, you know, like she wants trying to say, you know, should I take this vitamin or what, you know, like.
Yeah.
The dog threw up. Is it okay to feed the dog? You know, just wants very practical, intuitive advice, right? So, you know, but like once in a while I ask bigger questions, like, like what can I expect, like, you know, with the world situation in Ukraine, you know, or something.
Yeah.
You know, like political questions or something. But it's not like I do it regularly. I just do when I feel like it.
Yeah, I understand. And what's your vision like about tarot? Some people like see tarot as a therapy or magic practice or divination, or is it, or it can be everything together. It's like a combination.
I think people should do what they want with it. But the thing is, basically I teach my students that the best use of tarot is to get advice from your higher self, like to help you make decisions. Because predicting the future, you know, because the traditional thing is predicting the future, and I don't find predicting the future particularly valuable.
Yeah.
Because first of all, it could be wrong, and you know, it's not always accurate. Because basically, when you're doing a tarot reading, you're just hooking into what's happening in the present moment, and in the present moment, you can see where things are headed.
Yes.
But they don't have to go there. And in fact, if they had to go there, it would be fated. And what good would be to do a tarot reading if it's fated and you can't change it? It'd be like, oh yes, you know, this is why people are afraid of tarot readings. You know, they go to a tarot reader and they're afraid the tarot reader is going to say, oh, I'm sorry, you're going to die next week, and it's fated. You can't change it. So, you know, of course, tarot readers never say that. But the thing is, that's sort of what people are afraid of. Like bad news is going to happen, and there's nothing to do about it. But that's not the point. The point is, you want to find out from your higher self, from your inner wisdom, what you can do to improve your life right now, how you can make better decisions. So that's what I feel that, like, I really want people to do the tarot readings for themselves. So that's why I teach tarot, and I teach people how to read, because I figured everybody has intuition. This is a tool that develop their intuition and help them make better choices in their life. And like, you know, like for years I did a class at the New York Open Center where it was called the Tarot as a Spiritual Journey. And so basically what I was teaching is like, well, if you use the tarot to help you make decisions in your life, and it's always coming from your higher self, eventually, and if you act on them, then you're becoming more and more like your higher self. So instead of being the jerk you used to be, now you're getting to be like a more spiritual person, you know?
Yes. It's what makes sense for me too. Like, it's more about self-knowledge and just communicate with your higher self and more think about your decisions. Yeah.
And I think that, and even the people that do predictions, the people argue and say, well, no, I do predictions. And I said, well, yeah, but when you do the predictions, what do you do with them? And then I try to work out the change it if it's bad.
Yeah.
Okay, so then it's not a prediction anymore. So it's a forecast.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
You don't like the forecast, you want to do something about it, you know? So like,
yeah. If you can know, you can change it, of course. That's the thing. I think that's the point about tarot. If you can know, you can change it. You can think about it.
Okay, but the thing is, now on the other hand, with dream divination, when I had dreams, I have dreams that would tell me things in the future, like months ahead of time, sometimes years ahead of time, in great detail, and they predict all these things about it, and it was fated. You know, it wasn't like, you know, it wasn't like a tarot reading. So I can see the difference. You see, when I do a tarot reading, I'm working with like what I can change and, you know, where things are going. They're always really about the present and where things, you know, if we're talking about the future, it's only where things are headed in the present. But we could do readings about the past, you know, but they're really from the viewpoint of right now. But dreams, I've had, you know, like remember I was just telling you about the thing where Alan McKnight told me about the film Positives, right? Okay, well, I was telling you about my friend Scott. And Scott's last name was Jarrett, his brother was Keith Jarrett. See, like his whole family were musicians. So Keith Jarrett's a really famous jazz musician. And the thing is, Keith lived near me in New Jersey, but I never saw him, even though I knew Scott really well, and I knew his mother and his other brother, and I never met Keith. And the thing is, because he's sort of mysterious, because he tries to keep his distance from people because he doesn't want fans mobbing him or something. So one night I had this dream that I went to Keith's house. And I was invited to Keith's house. And I went there, and it looked like it was a stone farmhouse with a porch. And I went in, and I saw all my drawings were on this transparent film, like hanging out away from the wall, like in the air. And I was thinking, like, well, that's odd. Why are my drawings in his house? And so then, like a few months later, Scott had moved away from where we were living. He was living in New York City again. And he came back, and he was at his brother's house, Keith, and he needed me to pick him up. So he said, "Come on over. I want you to meet Keith, and I want you to pick me up and take me back to New York." So I went. So I actually got invited to Keith's house, just like, and sure enough, the house looked like the dream, even though I had never seen it before.
Yeah.
Okay, so I go in, and he had just done this piece, like he was doing this piece with an orchestra at that time, like that was a big breakthrough. And so he had this incredible stereo system. So the whole place is surrounded by his music, like hanging off the walls, like the way my drawings did in the dream. So I talked to Keith a little bit and walked around the house, looked around at his art collection, and then he had a lot of primitive artwork. So then we left, and I was driving Scott, and I told him about the dream, and I said the only thing was that instead of his music was my drawings. And I didn't quite understand it. Okay, so then I moved out of New Jersey. I moved to New York. Years later, I'm working on the alchemical tarot. And I'm trying to figure out how to do the coloring. And then that's when guy tells me about doing the film positives. And then I end up with my drawings that I'm doing on these transparent film sheets. That now, you see, what the dream was telling me is that the way Keith's music is being shown all around the world, being reproduced, and like giving him a reputation, this is going to be your reputation, just like it. See, and I had no idea at the time, even when I went to Keith's house, like what the dream was really about, until I was published, and I saw this film positives, and I realized I had this, they were being published in England, and they're going to be seen all around the world, wow. And then it was like, it gave me goosebumps, because it's like, see, now that's the thing, is the dream told me all this stuff in detail that I couldn't possibly know till it happened.
Yes. Oh, that it's like, I'm suspicious to talk about dreams because I really like it. So, and I'm really like, I don't know. I'm fascinated with this. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Now the interesting thing is, like, I never had been to England, right? But just this year, I was invited to speak at the Tarot convention in England, in Manchester. So in July, I'm supposed to go to England finally.
Yeah.
So like bring full circle, maybe.
Yeah. So you told us a lot of stories here, but I'm gonna ask you to tell us another story that was very meaningful to you involving tarot. But first, because we are getting to the end, how people can find you on your website? Yeah, I'm gonna put here on the description.
You put the website. Well, yeah, it's called robertmplacetarot.com. Yeah.
So if they want to, because you were doing now online workshops, yeah.
Yeah, I've been doing, well, like as I say, I was doing a workshop at the Open Center for years until the pandemic happened. And,
yes.
And also, I was also twice a year I was going to the Metropolitan Museum where I would lecture on their collection of cards. They have tarot cards and oracle cards and playing cards, and I do it like about a 4-hour lecture on we go in the back room where the print collection is, and we take out all these cards out of the boxes and look at them. But of course, when the pandemic happened, we had to stop.
Yes.
But I've been all over the world. Like I told you, I gave classes in Brazil. I've been in Italy. I've been to China several times, Australia. But the thing is, once the pandemic happened, I started doing more. Like since the pandemic happened, I did several more classes in China on Zoom, and I did one in Germany, and I did one in England even. on
You
Zoom.
need to come to Canada.
Yeah, I know. I'm right near Canada, right?
Yeah.
I'm in New York.
In the winter. No, I'm joking.
Yeah,
So
no, I went to Canada a long time ago, but I wasn't into any
yeah.
tarot.
For East Coast or West Coast or
I
Central?
was in Quebec.
Quebec. Oh, it's not so cold this year.
Montreal and Quebec.
When it's -5 in Quebec, here is like -35, 40, -40. Oh my God, yeah.
Okay, you're not selling it, you know.
Yeah. So, but before we go to the to our like last, it's not a last question. Now you're gonna tell us a story, but if they want buy a tarot, they can reach you.
Yeah, at my website, Robert M. Play Tarot, and all the ones that I publish are there.
It's awesome. Yes.
I think see, the thing about the tarot is, like, a lot of people think that, you know, like you're supposed to meditate on, get these spiritual messages and stuff. But I find what the most important thing is, that it helps you when you're going astray to pull you back towards your higher self. So, like, for instance, if my wife and I are having an argument and we don't know how to solve it, we do a tarot reading. And what we'll do, and I say I do these 3-card readings where I'll do 3 cards representing myself, 3 cards representing Roseanne, and then we see how it goes together, and then you see each other's viewpoints, and then you see how it comes together, and then we get advice about how we can get back on track, you know, because obviously you're getting off track. And I think that's the most important thing to me with the tarot. It's like it keeps you on track, and like I find with my students sometimes, like they you know, they're doing a reading and they're saying, oh yeah, this is me, I'm on a spiritual journey, I'm a spiritual person. And I'm like, you know, and I go, you're not getting anywhere with this, you know. What, you want the tarot to tell you where you're not a spiritual person.
Yes.
Okay, so, you know, like things that could be embarrassing, you know, that, like, so that you can fix them and get better. I mean, it's the same way. I don't know. It's the same way I draw. I mean, the thing is, you draw a picture and then you look at it and figure out what's wrong with it, and that's how it gets good.
Yes.
You know, like, this is out of proportion. How was the proportion? To fix that, and then, you know, go away from it and come back. And so tarot readings are like that. They're like works of art. You know, like what you're the art piece.
Yeah. No, that's a real class. Like today here, I think it was a real in-person class from you. Not just to me, but I mean for everybody that's watching here. And it's been a pleasure having you here, of course. Thanks so much again. And I have a last question. I promise that's the last one. But what's the best way to start learning tarot?
Oh, well,
read your books.
Yeah, you read my book, obviously. So I like them.
Yes.
Okay. Besides plugging myself, I would say just, you know, you need to get a deck and play around with it, and just like feel free to play with it and let it talk to you. The thing is to get familiar with the cards, so that you're familiar with the pictures and what they're saying, so they talk to you, and then you put them together and you let them make stories and talk to you. That's really all it is.
Yes.
So just play with the deck, and then read my book.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Yeah, thanks so much again. I hope you maybe in the future you're gonna have another conversation here.
Okay, sure. Be glad. Okay, so, you know, we could carry on into you know, other subjects besides how I started out.
Yes. Thanks so much, Robert.
Okay. Take care.
I'm gonna stop here just a minute.